For thousands of years, the rhythm of human life was set by the pace of footsteps, the beat of horse hooves, and the whims of the wind in a sail. A journey of just 50 miles could consume several days. A message might take weeks to arrive. For most people, their entire world was a small circle they were born into and would never leave. Their lives and their deaths happened within that narrow boundary. Then, in the span of a single century, something incredible happened. Distance began to collapse. Roads hardened from muddy tracks into engineered surfaces. Rivers were tamed and transformed into bustling highways. The immense power of steam conquered the limitations of muscle. And just like that, humanity crossed an invisible threshold, leaving behind a slow world dictated by geography and entering a fast world shaped by machines. This is the story of the first transportation revolution, the moment when movement changed everything. Before the 18th century, transportation was humanity's greatest bottleneck. Most goods moved no faster than they did in the days of ancient Rome. Carts would get hopelessly stuck in thick mud. Roads, often little more than dirt paths, would wash away with every heavy rain. Rivers flowed where nature put them, not necessarily where commerce needed them to go. In these largely rural societies, isolation was the norm. Markets were small and local. The food you ate was almost always grown just a few miles from your home. News traveled at a crawl, often becoming distorted and unreliable as it passed from person to person over long distances. Cities existed, of course, but they were like isolated islands floating in a vast, disconnected sea of countryside. But beneath the surface, immense pressure was building. Populations were steadily growing. New agricultural techniques were producing surpluses of food for the first time. Early factories were starting to emerge, hungry for a constant supply of raw materials and new markets to sell their finished goods. Empires needed to move troops and supplies more quickly to maintain control and expand their borders. The old, slow transportation system was creaking and groaning, about to break under the weight of these new demands. Something had to change, and it did. The very first transformation began right under our feet, on the ground itself. In places like Britain and parts of Europe, roads stopped being treated as passive paths worn into the earth by centuries of use. They became engineered systems. Surveyors with new tools meticulously measured gradients to find the smoothest routes. Builders learned to layer different sizes of stone to create a strong, durable foundation. Crucially, they planned for drainage, so rain would run off the sides instead of turning the road into a swamp. The result was the macadam road, a smooth, durable, and weather-resistant surface that allowed wheeled vehicles to move faster and more reliably than ever before. The impact was immediate. Travel times between cities began to shrink dramatically. Stagecoaches that once plodded along could now double their speed, racing between destinations. For the first time, regular, predictable schedules became possible. You could actually know, with some certainty, when a coach would depart and when it would arrive. This standardization of travel began to standardize time itself. But better roads alone were not enough to power a revolution. Water had always been the cheapest way to move heavy, bulky goods. The real breakthrough came when humans stopped relying only on the winding paths of natural rivers and started building their own waterways. Canals were carved like artificial arteries through the landscape, connecting mines to factories and factories to ports. An ingenious invention, the canal lock acted like a water elevator, allowing boats to overcome changes in elevation and climb hills. Suddenly, enormous quantities of coal, timber, grain, and iron could flow through the country at unprecedented volumes. Entire regions were reshaped to serve these new water highways. Towns that were once sleepy villages exploded into bustling hubs along these canal routes. The value of land shifted, depending on its proximity to a canal. Industries started to cluster in places where water could carry their products farther and cheaper than ever imagined. And then came steam. At first, the steam engine was a stationary beast, confined to factories and mines, powering pumps and looms. But a few visionaries imagined something truly radical. What if the engine itself could move? Steam-powered boats were the first to make this dream a reality. They challenged the ancient tyranny of wind and current. Rivers that were once one-way streets for downstream travel became two-way superhighways. Journeys became predictable. Schedules replaced guesswork. Soon, steamships ventured onto the open ocean, shrinking the vastness of the seas. Global trade expanded, and passengers experienced something entirely new: travel that didn't depend on the moods of nature. Finally, the revolution put down iron roots. Iron rails began to stretch across the land. The first railways were crude, noisy, and frankly, dangerous. But they worked. A single steam locomotive could haul a load that no team of horses could ever hope to match, at speeds that no road could possibly support. Railways didn't just connect existing cities, they fundamentally reorganized them. To coordinate the complex schedules of speeding trains, time itself had to be standardized, leading to the creation of time zones. Urban centers exploded in size as people and resources flooded in. The age-old isolation of rural life began to weaken. Separate, regional economies started to merge into a single, interconnected national economy. For ordinary people, life was utterly transformed. A worker could now live farther from their job, commuting from a newly formed suburb. The food on your plate could arrive fresh from distant farms. Newspapers, delivered by train, started carrying national stories instead of just local gossip, creating a shared sense of national identity. Migration became easier, and with it, opportunity and competition expanded for everyone. But this progress was not a gentle tide that lifted all boats. Small communities that were bypassed by the new canals and railways withered and died. Traditional livelihoods, like those of stagecoach drivers or canal boatmen, collapsed almost overnight. The smoke and soot from engines polluted the air, and the construction of these massive projects caused widespread environmental damage. Accidents were frequent and often horrific. The pace of life accelerated, sometimes with brutal force, demanding more from workers than ever before. The transportation revolution was not a quiet evolution. It was relentless and unforgiving. By the middle of the 19th century, the world was almost unrecognizable from what it had been just 100 years earlier. Distance no longer defined a person's destiny. Speed became a new form of power. Economies integrated on a national and even global scale. Nations centralized their governments. Empires expanded their reach with terrifying efficiency. Warfare, commerce, and culture all accelerated to a dizzying new pace. This revolution laid the essential foundation for our modern world. Without it, there would be no mass production, no complex global supply chains, no daily commuting, and no rapid communication networks. It also profoundly reshaped human psychology. People began to think in terms of progress, speed, and constant expansion. The future, which had once felt distant and unchanging, now seemed to be rushing toward them, and it felt faster than ever before. Today, we cross continents in a matter of hours and send messages around the globe in seconds. Distance can feel almost meaningless, but this world we inhabit was not inevitable. It was built painstakingly, mile by mile, canal by canal, and rail by rail, by a generation that dared to imagine movement not as a gift of nature, but as something that could be controlled, engineered, and accelerated. The first transportation revolution did more than just move goods from one place to another. It moved humanity itself out of a slow, local, and predictable past and into the fast, interconnected, and dynamic world where motion defines modern life. Every highway we drive on, every track a train follows, begins with that first revolutionary step into speed. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more stories about how our world came to be.